Every U.S. tanks used in World War II. The M3 Stuart light tank earned its place in history as one of America's most important armored vehicles of World War II. Nicknamed Honey by British crews for its smooth handling and reliability, the Stuart represented a significant leap forward in American tank design when it entered service in 1941. Weighing approximately 12.5 tons, the M3 Stuart was powered by a Continental W670 radial gasoline engine, producing 250 horsepower, giving it a top speed of 36 miles per hour on roads. This impressive mobility made it ideal for reconnaissance missions and rapid advances. The tank's crew of 4 operated within cramped but functional quarters, with the commander doubling as the gunner for the main armament. Armed with a 37mm M6 gun and multiple 30-caliber machine guns, the Stuart packed decent firepower for its size, though it struggled against heavier German and Japanese tanks. Its riveted armor ranged from 13mm to 51mm thick, providing adequate protection against small arms and light anti-tank weapons, but proving vulnerable to larger guns. The Stuart saw extensive combat across every theater of war. In North Africa, British forces used it effectively in desert warfare. In the Pacific, it proved invaluable against Japanese forces, where its speed and reliability outweighed concerns about armor thickness. The tank also served with distinction in Europe during the early war years. Over 13,000 M3 Stuarts were produced in various models, with improved versions like the M5 Stuart featuring upgraded engines and welded armor. The tank's legacy extended beyond World War II, serving in numerous armies well into the 1950s and proving that sometimes maneuverability and reliability matter more than raw firepower. The M22 Locust represents one of World War II's most ambitious yet ultimately underutilized innovations, a tank specifically designed to be delivered by aircraft. Developed in 1941 in response to the U.S. Army's requirement for an air-transportable light tank, the Locust was engineered to provide airborne forces with immediate armored support after parachute or glider insertion. Weighing just 7.4 tons, the M22 was remarkably compact, measuring only 12 feet 11 inches long. This featherweight design allowed it to fit inside the massive Hamilcar glider used by British forces. Power came from a Lycoming 0435 trillions 6-cylinder engine, producing 162 horsepower, giving the diminutive tank a respectable top speed of 40 miles per hour on roads. The 3-man crew, driver, gunner, and commander, operated in extremely cramped conditions. Armament consisted of a 37mm M6 gun, the same weapon used on the M3 Stuart, along with a coaxial 30-caliber machine gun. Armor thickness ranged from only 9mm to 25mm, making the Locust vulnerable to most anti-tank weapons, but acceptable given its intended rapid strike role. Despite production of 830 units between 1943 and 1944, the M22 saw minimal combat use by American forces. Logistical challenges, lack of suitable transport aircraft, and questions about tactical doctrine limited its deployment. The British acquired several dozen Locust tanks and used a handful during Operation Varsity, the Rhine crossing in March 1945, their only significant combat action. The M22 Locust ultimately proved that while the concept of airborne armor was innovative, the technology and tactical understanding of the era weren't quite ready to make it practical. Nevertheless, it pioneered ideas that would influence post-war airborne vehicle development. If you enjoyed this, like the video and subscribe. The M24 Chaffee light tank arrived near the end of World War II as the culmination of American light tank development, addressing many shortcomings of its predecessor, the M3 Stuart. Named after General Abner Chaffee, considered the father of the U.S. Armored Force, this elegant design combined firepower, mobility, and crew comfort in ways previous light tanks had never achieved. Entering combat in late 1944, the Chaffee weighed 18.5 tons and featured significantly improved armament over the Stuart. Its 75 mm M6 gun, the same caliber used on early Sherman tanks, gave it genuine anti-tank capability against most Axis armor. This represented a massive upgrade from the Stuart's inadequate 37 mm gun. Secondary armament included two 30 caliber machine guns and a 50 caliber machine gun for anti-aircraft defense. The tank's twin Cadillac V8 engines produced 220 horsepower combined, propelling it to speeds of 35 miles per hour with excellent cross-country performance. The torsion bar suspension provided superior ride quality compared to earlier designs. Armor thickness ranged from 9 mm to 38 mm, still relatively thin but acceptable for a reconnaissance vehicle prioritizing speed over protection. The five-man crew appreciated the Chaffee's spacious interior, improved visibility, and reliable mechanical systems. Approximately 4,700 were produced before war's end, with only a fraction seeing combat in Europe and the Pacific. The M24's real legacy came after World War II. It served extensively in the Korean War and remained in service with numerous armies worldwide through the 1970s. Many consider it one of the finest light tank designs ever produced, proving that sometimes the best solutions arrive just as circumstances change. The M3 medium tank, known as the Lee by Americans and the Grant by British forces, emerged from desperate necessity in 1941. As war engulfed Europe and America rushed to rearm, U.S. engineers needed a tank mounting a 75 mm gun, but lacked time to develop a turret capable of housing it. Their unconventional solution became one of World War II's most distinctive and controversial armored vehicles. The M3's radical design featured a 75 mm gun mounted in a sponson on the right side of the hull, with a smaller 37 mm gun in a rotating turret above. This awkward arrangement meant the entire tank had to face its target for the main gun to fire, limiting tactical flexibility. The tall profile, standing over 10 feet high, made it an easy target. Secondary armament included multiple 30 caliber machine guns, and later variants added a commander's cupola with a 50 caliber machine gun. Weighing 20,007.5 tons, the M3 was powered by either a Wright radial aircraft engine or twin General Motors diesel engines, depending on the variant. The seven-man crew operated in cramped, divided compartments. Armor ranged from 12 mm to 57 mm, adequate against early war threats, but increasingly vulnerable as German anti-tank weapons improved. Despite its limitations, the M3 proved crucial during critical periods. British forces used Grants effectively at the Battle of Gazala and First El Alamein in 1942, where its 75 mm gun finally gave them firepower parity with German tanks. In the Pacific, M3S served reliably against Japanese forces. Over 6,000 M3S were produced between 1941 and 1942, before being superseded by the superior M4 Sherman, which finally mounted the 75 mm gun in a proper turret, rendering the awkward Lee Grant obsolete. The M4 Sherman medium tank stands as the most iconic American armored vehicle of World War II and one of history's most influential tank designs. Entering production in 1942, the Sherman became the backbone of Allied armored forces, with over 49,000 produced in numerous variants, a testament to American industrial might and pragmatic engineering. Weighing approximately 30 tons, the Sherman addressed the critical flaws of its predecessor, the M3 Lee, by mounting a 75 mm gun in a fully rotating turret. This provided tactical flexibility that proved invaluable in combat. The five-man crew, commander, gunner, loader, driver, and assistant driver, operated in relatively spacious conditions compared to other tanks of the era. Secondary armament included two 30 caliber machine guns and a 50 caliber machine gun on the turret. Power came from various engines depending on the variant, including the reliable Continental R 975 radial, Ford GAA V8, or twin General Motors diesels, providing speeds up to 30 miles per hour on roads. The vertical volute spring suspension offered decent cross-country mobility, though inferior to German torsion bar systems. The Sherman's greatest strength was reliability and ease of maintenance, crucial factors often overlooked in favor of raw combat statistics. While its armor, ranging from 13 mm to 76 mm, and firepower were inferior to late-war German tanks like the Panther and Tiger, the Sherman's mechanical dependability, crew survivability features, and sheer numbers overwhelmed Axis forces. Later variants addressed firepower concerns with the potent 76 mm gun and the British 17-pounder Firefly conversion. The Sherman served in every theater, from North African deserts to European hedgerows to Pacific jungles, proving adaptable and effective. Its legacy extended decades beyond World War II, remaining in service worldwide until the 1990s. The M4A3E2, universally known as the Jumbo, represented a dramatic departure from standard Sherman philosophy. Designed specifically for the anticipated brutal fighting in Northern Europe following D-Day, this heavily armored variant transformed the reliable but thinly protected Sherman into a genuine assault tank capable of leading breakthrough operations and absorbing punishment that would destroy ordinary tanks. The Jumbo's defining characteristic was its massively upgraded armor protection. Front hull armor increased from the standard Sherman's 51 mm to an impressive 102 mm, while the turret front boasted 152 mm of protection, thicker than even the feared German Tiger IV. Additional armor plates welded to the hull sides and rear brought total weight to 38 tons, nearly 8 tons heavier than standard Shermans. This transformation made the Jumbo nearly invulnerable to most German anti-tank guns at typical combat ranges. To handle the extra weight, engineers strengthened the suspension with horizontal volute spring systems and wider tracks. The reliable Ford GAA V8 engine producing 500 horsepower remained unchanged, though top speed dropped to about 22 miles per hour. The five-man crew operated the same 75 mm gun as standard Shermans, though some Jumbos were later upgunned with the more powerful 76 mm cannon. Only 254 Jumbos were produced between June and July 1944, making them relatively rare. They served primarily with U.S. armored divisions in Europe, often leading tank columns through heavily defended areas. Crews prized their Jumbos, knowing the extra armor significantly improved survival odds. The Jumbo proved that the Sherman chassis possessed remarkable adaptability, successfully filling the heavy tank role that America otherwise largely neglected during World War II. The M26 Pershing arrived in the final months of World War II as America's answer to superior German armor, representing a fundamental shift in U.S. tank philosophy. Named after General John J. Pershing, this heavy tank finally provided American forces with a vehicle capable of meeting German Panthers and Tigers on equal terms, though it came frustratingly late in the war. Weighing 41.7 tons, the Pershing was substantially heavier than the Sherman it was designed to complement. Its most significant advancement was the powerful 90 mm M3 gun, capable of penetrating the armor of any German tank at reasonable combat ranges. This firepower, combined with frontal armor up to 102 mm thick on the hull and turret, gave American tankers the protection and punch they had long desired. The five-man crew operated in a spacious, well-designed interior with excellent visibility. The Ford GAA V8 engine produced 500 horsepower, the same as late-model Shermans, but struggled with the Pershing's greater weight. Top speed reached only 25 miles per hour, and the tank suffered from transmission reliability issues. The torsion bar suspension provided smooth rides but required careful maintenance. Only 20 Pershings reached Europe before Germany's surrender in May 1945, seeing limited combat in Germany. A small number served in Okinawa against Japanese forces. Approximately 2,200 were produced by war's end. The Pershing's true combat debut came during the Korean War, where it proved highly effective against Soviet-supplied T-34-85 tanks. Initially classified as heavy, it was later reclassified as a medium tank, influencing American tank design throughout the Cold War and evolving into the M46, M47, and eventually the M48 Patton series. The M6 heavy tank represents one of World War II's most intriguing what-if stories, a powerful, well-designed vehicle that never saw combat, despite being America's first true heavy tank. Developed between 1940 and 1942, as the U.S. Army sought to match European heavy tank developments, the M6 ultimately fell victim to logistical concerns and shifting military priorities. Weighing an imposing 57 tons, the M6 was a massive vehicle for its era, featuring a unique dual-gun turret mounting both a 76mm M7 gun and a 37mm M6 gun. This arrangement, along with multiple 30 and 50 caliber machine guns, provided impressive firepower. Armor protection ranged from 25mm to 83mm on early models, with the M6A2E, one experimental variant boasting up to 152mm of frontal armor, rivaling or exceeding contemporary German heavy tanks. Power came from a Wright G200 radial engine producing 800 horsepower, or a Caterpillar diesel in some variants, giving the behemoth a respectable top speed of 22 miles per hour. The six-man crew operated in relatively comfortable conditions with good visibility. The torsion bar suspension system was advanced for American tanks of the period. Despite these impressive specifications, only 40 M6 tanks were produced between 1942 and 1944. The Army General Staff deemed the vehicle too heavy for existing infrastructure, worried about transporting it overseas, and questioned whether its advantages justified the enormous logistical burden. By 1944, improved Shermans and the forthcoming Pershing made the M6 redundant. The M6 tank spent the war stateside in training roles, never firing a shot in anger. A cautionary tale about how practical considerations can override technical superiority in military procurement. The M10 tank destroyer, nicknamed Wolverine by the British, embodied American tank destroyer doctrine during World War II, prioritizing mobility and firepower over armor protection. Entering service in 1942, the M10 was designed for a specific tactical role: hunt down and destroy enemy tanks while avoiding direct slugging matches through speed and maneuverability. Built on a modified M4 Sherman chassis, the M10 weighed 29.6 tons and featured a distinctive low-profile, open-topped turret housing a powerful 3-inch, 76.2mm M7 gun. This weapon could penetrate most German armor at reasonable ranges, giving American forces a much-needed anti-tank punch early in the war. The open turret design, while providing excellent visibility and ventilation, left the five-man crew vulnerable to artillery airbursts, grenades, and small arms fire from above. Power came from twin General Motors 6-71 diesel engines, producing 375 horsepower combined, or a Ford GAA gasoline engine in later variants, providing speeds up to 30 miles per hour. The sloped armor ranged from 12mm to 57mm, adequate against small arms but vulnerable to direct hits from tank guns, reflecting the doctrine of shoot and scoot rather than standing and fighting. Over 6,700 M10s were produced between 1942 and 1943, seeing extensive service in North Africa, Italy, and northwestern Europe. The British modified many with their superior 17-pounder gun, creating the Achilles variant. While American tank destroyer doctrine proved controversial and was largely abandoned post-war, the M10 itself performed admirably in its intended role, providing mobile, hard-hitting firepower when and where it was needed most throughout the European and Mediterranean campaigns. The M18 Hellcat earned its fearsome nickname honestly, becoming the fastest tracked armored vehicle of World War II and one of the most successful American tank destroyers. Designed from the ground up, rather than adapted from existing chassis, the M18 perfectly embodied the aggressive seek, strike, and destroy philosophy of U.S. tank destroyer doctrine, trading protection for blistering speed and devastating firepower. Weighing only 17.7 tons, remarkably light for a vehicle mounting a 76mm M1A1 gun, the Hellcat achieved an astonishing top speed of 55 miles per hour on roads, with excellent cross-country performance. This speed came from the Continental R975C4 radial engine producing 400 horsepower, combined with a lightweight design philosophy. The torsion bar suspension provided exceptional handling, allowing crews to rapidly relocate after engaging targets. The open-topped turret, while leaving the five-man crew exposed to overhead threats, rotated a full 360 degrees in just 20 seconds, among the fastest traverse rates of any World War II tank. The 76mm gun could penetrate most German armor at combat ranges, and crews learned to use their speed advantage to flank heavier enemy tanks, striking vulnerable side and rear armor before disappearing. Armor protection was minimal, ranging from just 7mm to 25mm, making the Hellcat vulnerable to virtually any anti-tank weapon. Crews adopted the motto "speed is armor," relying on mobility and tactical cunning rather than steel plate. Approximately 2,507 18s were produced between 1943 and 1944, serving primarily in Europe. The Hellcat boasted an impressive kill-to-loss ratio, with crews claiming the highest number of enemy tank kills per vehicle among American tank destroyers, validating its aggressive design philosophy and earning legendary status among armored forces. The M36 tank destroyer, unofficially known as Jackson or Slugger, arrived in late 1944 as the most powerful American tank destroyer of World War II. Developed in response to increasingly formidable German armor, like the Panther and Tiger, the M36 packed a devastating punch that could finally engage these fearsome opponents on favorable terms at extended ranges. The M36's defining feature was its formidable 90mm M3 gun, the same weapon later mounted on the M26 Pershing heavy tank. This powerful cannon could penetrate the frontal armor of most German tanks at combat ranges, giving American crews the confidence to engage targets that would have been dangerous or impossible for earlier tank destroyers. The open-topped turret provided excellent visibility and crew comfort, though it maintained the vulnerability to overhead fire that characterized American tank destroyer design. Built primarily on M1001 hulls, the M36 weighed approximately 28.1 tons and utilized either the Ford GAAV-8 gasoline engine or twin General Motors diesels, providing speeds up to 26 miles per hour. Armor protection remained modest, at 12mm to 50mm, as the tank destroyer doctrine still emphasized mobility and firepower over protection. The five-man crew operated in cramped but functional conditions. Over 2,300 M36s were produced between 1943 and 1945, entering combat in Europe during the autumn of 1944. They proved immediately effective, particularly during the Battle of the Bulge, where their 90mm guns countered German heavy armor offensive. The M36 continued service well beyond World War II, seeing action in Korea, Vietnam, and various conflicts worldwide through the 1990s, testament to its enduring effectiveness as a mobile anti-tank platform. The M3 gun motor carriage, often called the M3 GMC or M3 75mm GMC, represents American ingenuity and pragmatism in the desperate early days of U.S. involvement in World War II. Developed rapidly in 1941 as a stopgap measure, this improvised tank destroyer mounted a powerful French 75mm gun on a simple half-track chassis, creating America's first self-propelled anti-tank weapon. The design was remarkably straightforward. A 75mm M1897A4 gun, derived from the famous French 75 artillery piece, mounted in an open fighting compartment on an M3 half-track chassis. This simple arrangement provided no armor protection for the gun crew, leaving them completely exposed to small arms fire, shrapnel, and the elements. The five-man crew operated the weapon from behind a low gun shield, offering minimal protection. Weighing approximately 9 tons, the M3 GMC utilized the half-track's White 160 axe engine, producing 147 horsepower, achieving speeds up to 45 miles per hour on roads. The tracked rear and wheeled front provided decent cross-country mobility, though nothing compared to fully tracked vehicles. The 75mm gun could engage enemy armor effectively at medium ranges, though its positioning high on the chassis made concealment difficult. Around 2,200 M3 GMCs were produced between 1941 and 1943, seeing service primarily in North Africa and the early Italian campaigns. American forces used them until more capable tank destroyers like the M10 became available. The British also employed them in the Western Desert, appreciating their mobility despite the lack of crew protection. The M3 GMC proved that sometimes an adequate weapon available immediately beats a perfect weapon arriving too late, a lesson in military procurement that remains relevant today. The M8 light armored car, universally known as the Greyhound, served as the U.S. Army's primary wheeled reconnaissance vehicle during World War II. Entering service in 1943, this six-wheeled scout car combined speed, firepower, and reliability in a package that proved ideal for screening advances, gathering intelligence, and providing security across every theater of operations. Weighing 7.9 tons, the M8 featured a distinctive open-topped turret mounting a 37mm M6 gun, the same weapon used on the M3 Stuart light tank, along with a coaxial 30 caliber machine gun. A 50 caliber machine gun could be mounted on a ring for anti-aircraft defense, while the 37mm gun was becoming obsolescent against heavier German armor. It remained effective against light vehicles, fortifications, and infantry positions. The four-man crew, commander, gunner, driver, and co-driver, operated in relatively comfortable conditions, powered by a Hercules JXD inline-six gasoline engine producing 110 horsepower. The Greyhound achieved impressive road speeds up to 56 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest armored vehicles of the war. The 6x six-wheel configuration with front and rear driving wheels provided excellent cross-country mobility, though it couldn't match tracked vehicles in rough terrain. Armor ranged from 9mm to 19mm, sufficient against small arms but vulnerable to anti-tank weapons. Approximately 8,500 M8 Greyhounds were produced between 1943 and 1945, serving with distinction in Europe and the Pacific. Reconnaissance units valued its speed and reliability for screening operations and rapid advances. The M8's exceptional service record extended well beyond World War II, with various nations operating it into the 1990s, proving that good reconnaissance vehicle design emphasizes mobility and reliability over heavy armament. The M20 armored utility car emerged as a specialized variant of the successful M8 Greyhound, sharing the same chassis and mechanical components, but adapted for different tactical roles. Developed in 1943, the M20 sacrificed the M8's turret and main armament to create an open-topped vehicle optimized for command, reconnaissance, and transport duties that required speed and crew flexibility over direct firepower. The most distinctive feature of the M20 was its open-topped configuration with a low armored ring instead of the M8's turret. This design provided the crew with exceptional all-around visibility, critical for reconnaissance missions. Armament consisted of a single 50-caliber M2 Browning machine gun on a skate rail mount that could traverse 360 degrees, offering reasonable defensive capability and anti-aircraft protection. The crew typically numbered 4 to 6, depending on the mission, mechanically identical to the M8. The M20 weighed slightly less at 7.4 tons and utilized the same Hercules JXD engine producing 110 horsepower, achieving top speeds of 56 miles per hour. The 6x6 wheel configuration provided excellent road mobility and adequate cross-country performance. Armor protection remained minimal at 9 mm to 19 mm, relying on speed and maneuverability for survival. Approximately 3,680 M20s were produced between 1944. They served extensive vehicles, forward observer platforms for artillery units, command cars for armored divisions, and personnel carriers for special operations. The M20 excelled at communications relay roles, carrying radio equipment and serving as mobile command posts. The M20's versatility made it invaluable for missions requiring speed, communication capability, and situational awareness, rather than direct combat power, proving that specialized variants often serve critical battlefield functions. If you enjoyed this, like the video and subscribe.